When I bought my first rental, I lost over $30,000 in easily avoidable mistakes. And in this video, I'm going to cover all the ways that I lost money making newbie errors so you can avoid them and save yourself time, money, and effort. As they say, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. This video will help you make sure that you do not repeat any of my mistakes. Okay, for mistake number one, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, actually said this, and that is to not chase the hot thing, whatever that is. The reason is because whatever is the most popular form of investment at the time usually gets saturated very quickly with competition and stops becoming profitable. For example, a lot of Airbnb hosts are really struggling with all the competition out there now, and there's so many cities that are really cracking down on allowing Airbnbs. In fact, a lot of them are outright banning them. Back when Airbnb wasn't such a huge trend, cities were actually pretty lenient with short-term rentals. It wasn't until Airbnb became really trendy that things started going downhill for Airbnb investors. So here's what I would recommend. Instead of choosing a strategy because everyone else is doing it and it's making a lot of money, choose a strategy that you feel drawn towards or are truly interested in. For example, when I got started, I invested in student housing because I recently graduated as a pharmacist, and then I bought my first rental about a year after graduation. So I really related to the students' struggles at the time, and I wanted to make housing easy for them so that they could focus on their studies. You see, if you choose a strategy just for the money, the problem is when the money doesn't come in year one or year two, you lose your primary source of motivation. Versus if you choose something that you're passionate about, you're more likely to stick it through to the very end, even in the tough times, which is a major key to being successful in real estate investing. All right, now let's go to mistake number two, which is not being aware of the big 6-ticket items that can cost you a lot of money on your first rental. If these 6 items are really old or in bad repair, then you need to negotiate with the seller to get it repaired or replaced before you buy the house. Your big 6-ticket items are your foundation, your roof, your HVAC, your sewage line, your plumbing, and your electricals. Now, I made this mistake where I bought a house and there are several of these big ticket items that were in disrepair, and it cost me over $30,000. For example, I got a call in the middle of the night from one of my tenants, and he was saying, "Oh my God, there's sewage that's coming out of the kitchen sink and it's all over the kitchen floor and it's backing out of the showers as well." I had to hurry up and call a plumber to get in there and see what's going on. He stuck a camera down the pipe and found that the whole pipe was actually broken, and I had to replace the whole sewage line with PVC, which cost me about $9,000. Not only that, but I had to hire a sanitation crew to come out there and clean up the kitchen and the bathrooms, and that cost another couple $1,000s. So my first rental was obviously not very easy, but what I could have done was during the escrow phase of when I was buying that property, I could have done a sewage lateral line inspection. Now this inspection only cost a couple $100s, but it could have saved me several thousands of dollars in expenses because it would have found that line break in the sewage line, and I would have been able to negotiate that with the seller for them to cover part or most of the repair. Another problem that happened on my first property is the property had no AC, which I actually wasn't aware of when I bought it. And so during the summer, it got up to 100 degrees because we're in California and it gets really, really hot. So inside the house was like 80 degrees. And what I was forced to do was put in a mini split system, which cost me over $15,000. Now, obviously, if I took a look at the inspection report, I would have seen that the house did not have a functional AC system and saved myself a lot of money there. So really pay attention to those big 6-ticket items whenever you walk through the house or get inspections on it so that you save yourself a lot of money by finding the issues with the house ahead of time before you buy the property so that you can negotiate with the seller for them to cover some of those costs. All right, mistake number 3 is not saving up enough money before you buy your first property. Now, there are ways to buy a property for a very low down payment. The best way to do this is by doing a house hack where you live in one room and rent out the other bedrooms. In this circumstance, because you're living at the house, you can put as low as a 3.5% down payment on it. And if the house is a multifamily property, you can put as low as a 5% down payment on it. So let's say you buy a $300,000 property, 3.5% down payment is only $10,500. But the problem you have to realize is that there are also something called closing costs, and there's also repairs that you have to make after you buy the house usually. Not only that, but if you furnish the property, you also have to pay for furniture. So for those three items, I recommend having at least $10,000 to $15,000 in buffer money and emergency funds. Basically, if you're buying a $300,000 property where you're putting $10,500 down on it, I would expect you to save at least $25,000 so that you have at least $15,000 in emergency funds. Another question you should ask yourself is, can you afford the monthly mortgage payment if in the worst case scenario, you don't rent out the house and you have to pay the mortgage out of pocket? If the answer is no, you can't afford that, then I don't think you should be buying that property. All right, now mistake number 4 is a mistake that I personally made and cost me a lot of time and effort. And that was not sticking to one strategy and trying to do multiple strategies at the same time. This is also known as shiny object syndrome, where you're chasing multiple different strategies because you see that you can make money here and this way, you can make money in there and that way. And it's so tough to just stick to one thing long enough to master it, to actually make money and to make good money from that one strategy. So remember that it's better to go deep into one strategy than learning surface level knowledge of many different strategies. So I made this mistake where I tried to flip this property while I was also scaling and buying more rental properties. And the time suck and the headaches and the stress that happened to me while I was trying to do that flip property at the same time really made my life super difficult. And it was definitely not worth it. In fact, the flip was sucking out so much cash from my rentals that even though my rentals were doing very well, I was barely breaking even while I was doing that flip project. And so if I were to go back, I would have scaled my rentals to a position where I felt very comfortable before I took on that expensive flip project. So learn from my mistake, guys, and just choose one strategy and stick with it for at least 2 or 3 years before you move on to the next one. If you examine any really successful entrepreneurs out there, they really hyper-focus on one thing. They usually don't do multiple things at the same time. All right, finally, we have mistake number 5, which is getting stuck in all or none thinking. This is a common fallacy that a lot of people have when starting out in real estate. They'll basically think that it's working or it's not working and that there's no in between. So you're either successful or you're a failure. Now, this is not something that we're consciously telling ourselves, but unconsciously our mind is usually telling us we're either succeeding or failing. And it has a tendency to catastrophize the failing part of it. So, for example, there's this thing called first offer syndrome, where after your first offer is not accepted by a seller or you get rejected for some reason, a lot of buyers go into doom or gloom, like, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this, or the market is just too tough right now, or the economy is bad, etc., versus just getting back up on their feet and putting another offer on a different property. Think of it this way. If an item that you're trying to buy is out of stock, do you go like, oh my gosh, they're out of stock, I'll never get this item, I'm not cut out for this, I should just give up trying to buy this item? No, usually you go to another manufacturer or another store and search online until you find another source to buy that item. Same thing for real estate. If one seller denies you and says, I won't sell you this property, then you just go to another seller. Just like going to another store if a product is out of stock. I know it sounds simple, and that's because it is. But a lot of people get into their own heads and give up before asking another seller, or in the case of getting denied for financing, then they should just search for another lender. The final thought that I'll leave you with is that progress comes in steps. Even for me, I'm still learning so much about real estate and always trying to improve a little bit every day on my rental portfolio so that I produce happy tenants that refer others to me and can help grow my business. It's really important to have this beginner's mindset of just trying to constantly improve a little bit every day. and look back on the progress you made and appreciate how far you've grown, rather than focusing on how much further you have to go. Because if you focus too much on that gap between where you're at now versus where you want to be, then it's very easy to get discouraged and give up. So make sure you avoid that trap. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys can listen to it and avoid those 5 mistakes. And as always, remember, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends so it can really help others who are really struggling with getting started into real estate investing. And I'll go ahead and see you on the next week's video. Thank you.